Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Meetup, our IT and Security Meetup. This is June edition 2023. Uh, so, if you're online, if you're already here, uh, please send me hi in the chat and wait for 2 more minutes and then we get started. I see already 12 people waiting. I'll give 1 more minute. All right. Thanks, all, everyone. Thanks for joining. And this is our monthly meetup, June edition 2023. And I'll just go over some logistics and then some housekeeping. This meetup is sponsored by Okta. We are using their cloud platform, their streaming platform to record this event. So we thank Okta for sponsoring this meetup. And if you know me, if you all don't know me, I'm Pradeepa. I'm a developer advocate at Okta. You can best reach me at Twitter at Pradeepa, and in LinkedIn you can reach me at Pradeepa as well. So if you have any questions or anything like identity and security, feel free to reach out to me. Uh, we observe a code of conduct. If you are a subject or witness to any violations of the code of conduct, you can contact me, my name through my email, or if you already subscribed to Meetup, you can reach the organizer of any of your region. Uh, Please let us know. And the next thing is like we are as always like we are running every month the meetup, so we're always looking for speakers. So if you have something that you want to share, like a use case workshop or your personal projects which you have solved something, if you think like it's worth showcasing, feel free to reach out to me. It doesn't matter if it has to be a personal project or it's your the professional problem you try to solve. If you wanted to broadcast to a larger audience, if you feel like this is worth mentioning, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll schedule your title or a workshop in the next meetup. And I also would like to introduce you to our Auth0 Ambassador program. This program enables developers to empower the developer community and make the internet safer. If you think like you're a active community builder, if you write a blog or you write community posts, and if you think you're a eligible candidate, please go here and then apply for your ambassador program. You have benefits if you're an ambassador. I'm also wearing an ambassador t-shirt, so you get one. So if you feel like uh, you're eligible for it, please go ahead and apply. And also can reach out to me, like so I can help you with your application, and then I can reach out to the team and then tell them like you're a good candidate for us. The other thing which I wanted to introduce is our newsletter. uh, Please feel free to scan this QR code and then subscribe to the newsletter. So any latest updates on Auth0 product or anything on IT and security, and any events that are being conducted in the region, you get notified. So scan this QR code and then subscribe to this newsletter. The last and final housekeeping is like it's a live chat. So thanks for joining. Thanks for leaving the comment. So if you have any questions then and there, you can, like, whenever there's a talk, feel free to put it in the live chat. We will take the questions at the end of the talk, and then we'll consolidate it and then we answer the questions. So yeah, put it in the live chat. And if you are joining somewhere from different places, feel free to drop your name and then from your location, so that we can know from where you're joining and then what you want to what you're going to take away from this meetup. Without further ado, I'm just going to introduce our first talk, which is increasing authentication resilience with legacy environments. I'm going to introduce you to our speaker, who is Melbrick. Uh, hey, Melbrick.
Hey, cool. Hello, guys. Yeah,
I
nice
think
to
there's
meet you all. Thanks for hosting us, Okta. Cool,
yeah,
Pradeepa, you can hear me well, right?
yeah, I'm good. So yeah,
Okay.
will you introduce yourself? Yeah.
Yeah, so my name is Melvrick. I work at Ascenda. We are actually a loyalty SaaS. We work with quite a lot of banks, airlines, and e-commerce companies around the world. So I thought today we'll be here to share a little bit about like what we've learned working with some legacy applications and environments. Feel free to hit me up anytime on LinkedIn or Twitter even. Just have to search for my name. Cool. Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Melbrick. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm gonna disappear. The floor is all yours. Share a screen, and then let's get started.
Okay, cool. Just give us a second while we launch the presentation screener. Radipa, I think I need your help to screen the there we go. Awesome. Okay, cool. So yeah, today I'm here to share a little bit about like some of my experiences working with legacy environments, and a bit of the tension between increasing authentication resilience in a zero trust world today. Um, so I think we'll do a bit of a polling here and there today. Feel free to scan the QR code on the left or right. I've got a little icebreaker just for everyone to share a little bit about what they're working on. And then later on, for one or two other topics, we just would like to learn a little bit more about how you feel when you're thinking about the topics of like zero trust as well as legacy environments. Okay, so Um, for the benefit of our international audience over here, I'm from Singapore. This is just a little bit of where we're based. It's a sweltering like 35 degrees these days for us over here. And this is a quick look of the Ascenda office. Um, yeah, so as you can see, we've got a pretty good view of the city skyline as well. Okay, so I think today we'll see how the timing goes, but I think our topics will be centered around some of our learnings and with challenges around the legacy environments, and what are some of our strategies that we take around data and authentication beyond perimeter defense. So just to give you a little bit of context around like what we are and what we work on, because I think you will start to see like where some of the challenges appear. So essentially, Senda is a loyalty SaaS platform. If you have credit or debit cards that works with like rewards and earning of points, we provide the end-to-end solution to companies out there, and not just like the point computation that you see over here, but also allowing their customers to earn and redeem points by booking, let's say, hotels, flights, purchasing gift cards, and so on. Now, from a technical standpoint, this is how we sort of interface and interact. So I just went for like a roughly simplistic approach of like how our applications interact with companies out there. So you can imagine like we provide an end-to-end white label like loyalty solution. But this is integrated quite tightly with, let's say, our clients' purchase, banking, and transaction systems. So you can imagine every time you spend on a card, you need to be able to earn some points or redeem some points. So there is quite a lot of back and forth between the systems. Now, the challenge is, of course, not all of our services are like the latest and greatest. In fact, some of this um, can be fairly outdated. So I think today we just want to focus on like some of the challenges as we integrate and how we manage that process. Cool. Yeah. So thanks for the feedback. I guess a lot of us over here are coding a lot these days. Uh, I love that comment on connecting magic and reality. Um, I think if you're outside of the dev community, sometimes it really does appear like magic. So I really like that. Okay, so what about zero trust today? So let me pull up the next poll. So I'm just curious, like you can just share a little bit of like how you feel over here, like what zero trust means to you, and like typically in the environment that you're in, like what are some of the challenges that you identify the most with? So I mean, as we're polling, like generally speaking, like zero trust, as you can see over here, is based on the five core pillars around user, around data, around devices, network, traffic, and applications, right? It's based on the core belief that trusting in itself is a vulnerability. Um, Therefore, the idea is to pretty much like never trust but always verify, right? And how do we reconcile this, right? Like for example, from a user and identity standpoint, we want to make sure that our employees, for example, are always using enterprise managed identities. Our our during our day-to-day work, when they work with like let's say content in their internal tools, right? We want to make sure like they only have access to the information that they're supposed to have at, right? So, for example, you want to make sure that you are able to enforce least privilege, right? Other things could include, for example, and this is a very challenging problem, right? You want to be able to authenticate on the fly, right? That is also a particular challenge. Um, that in a lot of companies out there, this is not something that is fully matured yet. So these are like some of the basic challenges. Cool. And I think that took a while, but I think we can see that there were some. The most popular zero trust challenge that we can see over here is, I guess, in a way, least privilege. This is a lot of a day-to-day challenge that we can definitely identify with. Similarly, we can see the next one. We have perimeter defense, monitoring of users, etc. Okay, so we'll keep the poll on for a while more, and we'll continue. I think generally speaking, like as we advance the threats, as you can see from the options and everyone's opinion, like as we advance, like threats are manifold, uh, and the way you execute your threats against systems are getting more and more sophisticated. So, for example, the traditional measures of like being very dependent on like perimeter defense is no longer sufficient to like protect data and processes, right? So over here on this graph, just an attribution to a study by Bobix, just to secure the many interfaces from your infrastructure, the applications, the endpoints, devices, etc. There are many, many options, right? How to compromise, which is the vertical segment of the graph that you see over here. Again, that's multiplied, right? An adversary only needs one way to compromise our systems. So now we want to take a quick look at the legacy challenge, right? So I guess for my final poll of the day, just want to get a sense from everyone, like, what do you identify with when working with legacy environments? I'm sure a lot of us over here, be it in your day-to-day or maybe just like, with the friends or when engaging your different clients, like everybody has their own challenges with legacy environments, right? So again, over here, I'm keen to hear about some of the thoughts over here. And while we wait for the results to come in the meantime, this is just like a redacted representation of some of the common environments that we see out there as we work with our partners. So usually the way you deploy, the way you organize your information, there are many options over here. So here I'm just listing like a few different options. So for example, you have on-premise deployments using OpenShift and DOS. Typically identity providers on top of Auth0 and Okta, of course, you've got Ping Identity, ForgeRock. And of course, in a banking context, right, usually there's plenty of services. Some of the most common includes like customer profile, transactions, reporting deposits, right? And upstream, like in terms of what our customers or most customers see, obviously those services are served using a mix of internal and external orchestration services, right? So this usually these days includes the use of APIs as well as apps, but of course some of this content can be file-based as well. So this gives you roughly a sense of the stack. To the right over here, the slide is not really huge and I don't want to like overload us with information, but for example, some of the information sources could include like institutional services or like wealth management services and so on, right? But generally, this covers more or less the sense of the ecosystem, the space of the ecosystem that we're working with in the legacy environment. Whew. So I think results are kind of in. So yes, I think definitely difficulty upgrade is a huge challenge. Prioritization for sure as well. I think one thing from our experience and also from the people that we interact with, like upgrading is definitely like one of the biggest difficulties. Not just because of priority, but sometimes you just work with like some really old systems, right? So for example, I know someone who works directly with COBOL-based systems, right? That would be something that is like really, really difficult to upgrade. In fact, you probably have to re-platform the system itself. Okay, so thanks for tuning, guys. I'm going to switch over to the presentation fully from now on. We'll keep the slides open, the voting open if you're interested. To continue to check it out. We'll probably share the results at the end of the meetup further on later. Okay, so yeah, I think this is I think one of the big things that is quite notable over the years. So this is a survey from a while back in 2017 by Kofax on like where banks see themselves from a digital maturity standpoint. What is most notable is obviously everybody has to work with legacy systems, right? But investments, as you can see, has always gone towards the front office, right? Back office and middle office is a bit more of a challenge. And from the same survey, just very quickly, you can see like where they prioritize digitization internally. So the big ones, so at the top, you can see over here from left to right in the legend, the darkest will be what is the highest priority, right? And you can see that the middle, well, actually the front, middle, and back office all have areas that are of high priority. You can see the key one is in sales, but right next to that is core processing already. And today in today's session, like the back office is one of the big areas that we work with. So yeah, as you can see, like front office is where there's great emphasis. The back office is a close second. And fast forward, let's say around 5 years. So this is a late 21-22 survey by Celent. As you can see again, legacy systems transformation is still one of the top priorities, right? It's still a key cog. But yet 5 years on, how is it that this is still one of the key areas? But I think the reality is migrating is a monumental challenge. From the survey just now, we've also mentioned that, you know, upgrading is really, really difficult, right? So many are, in general, patterning wise, most banks are following a piecemeal effort towards like modernization to try and de-risk this. Banks are looking at modularizing, introducing more APIs to try and like progressively upgrade their platforms over here, right? I'm not going to spend most of the talk talking about like modernization. Very soon we'll look at some of these challenges over here. So this is just a sample dependency diagram of one mortgage subsystem attributed a computer weekly. Obviously, in a public space, we can't really share this sort of information, but this is not uncommon, right? This diagram looks really crazy, but it's not really a single systems diagram. This also documents down the individual processing components and their interdependencies, including the people, right? So the boxes that you see over here are like applications, databases and services. The lines that you see over here are calls to each other representing, for example, read-write of data, right? And the little icons over here that you see over here represents the humans interacting. Okay, so what's the strategy for working or working with a behemoth, right? So we want to start with the basic building blocks, which is the data. So one of the core challenges that we face is obviously data is the source of all your information, which means that your resilience starts here, right? So how do we, even if we cannot influence, how do we support our clients to handle, for example, data privacy and data protection, right? One of the biggest challenges that we have over here is actually the myriad of data sources as well as streams. So one big challenge is how do we build a consistent representation of user context before we even start to authenticate. Obviously, when you have multiple sources, one of the key challenges, again, across multiple subsystems, you have to work with inconsistent security practices across the board. So where do we start? Who has the latest information? What are some of the controls we can introduce, right? So let's say just to introduce multi-factor authentication, something that we expect as default today. And these days, we are talking about moving over to FIDO, right? Already, this is a challenge because we need to incorporate data points from multiple services, right? You need not just the user context, you need to know what are the ways you can contact them. Is it email? Is it phone? Are you even, for example, open to working with open source authenticator services from like Google or Twilio, right? So let's assume over here the starting point is just a single password-based login, right? If I want to introduce MFA over here, it does require an aggregation of disparate data points. So this is one of the examples that we have where you don't just work with a customer profile, but some of the information is not complete. Because over the years, you've got multiple systems overlapping and passing data around each other, while some have degraded. So for example, I want to work with the reporting system as well, right? And before I can do that, I need to merge that information in some way before I can start to offer some form of an MFA, right? So one of the challenges is there's no easy way to build consistency and hunt down that single source of truth across the entire customer context. So therefore, like rolling out additional protections such as MFA becomes complicated. Okay, then, but if you can get around that, right? If you can start to put that together, right? Collecting phones, emails, the user profile, and in fact, building for them the interface in which, you know, even if you don't have the full set of information, if you can provide an interface for the customer, say, you know, hey, this is what we've detected that you have, which is your latest identity. And if you can prove that, right, we can start to build some really interesting capabilities, right? Because now once I've aggregated this, I can start to introduce more factors of identity, right? One of the areas that we've been exploring, maybe not so much for consumer banking yet, but at least for like internal users is, can we find ways to incorporate the use of FIDO via the use of passkeys, right? For internal administration purposes, this is expected as a standard, right, in Zero Trust, right? Once we can start to combine this data, we can start to introduce this with the support of our partners. So one catch for us over here is ultimately, as a service provider, we are still dependent on the core customer data downstream. So unlike your pure play passkey implementations, we obviously don't allow our end users to directly enroll using that passkey. This is only for passkeys that is already existing within a bank's context. Okay, can we add value back into the ecosystem? The answer is yes. Once we provide the identity plane, right, for customers to interact and actually add in their verification to that information that we have across disparate data sources over here, that unlocks us to actually solve that problem for our clients as well. Because now you now have a feedback loop that allows you to sync that user information back into our client systems. So this is, for example, one bonus way in which we can solve this problem. Okay, hope I'm not running out of time, but the second big aspect is around strong perimeter defense, right? So traditionally, perimeter defense means we focus on like firewalls, VPN, packet filters, IDS, right? But what's after? And this is actually one of the big questions that we have day to day, which is, okay, we have strong perimeter defense now that we're integrating our services together. What can we do to, for example, introduce continuous monitoring? Can we revalidate the user's context and challenge them with, let's say, an MFA challenge if we detect that where the session is has suddenly changed locations or IPs for example. So just now we saw a redacted representation of potential legacy architectures. In such a situation, which is the gray zone over that you see over here, you don't have first-class support for controlling access across all services in most cases. Especially, for example, if the subsystem is, let's say, a Unisys system from 20 years back, right? So the challenge is how do we create like a trusted plane, right, or trusted environment from an untrusted segment of the ecosystem. Don't take that like literally, but untrusted in the sense of like in a zero trust context, like just perimeter defense. This is a slightly more untrusted segment. Right? So actually, the next best option is to then deploy like a trusted proxy that starts to allow us to introduce some of the zero trust practices on operating information. I.e., as you've probably seen from the poll just now, we're after micro segmentation, right? Can we establish a micro perimeter, right? And then after that, you can start to introduce our own services around the data plane, access control using policy plane, as well as a fraud engine before we sit our customer set facing like rewards APIs, applications, and tools above. So a couple of things that we focus on. So I think these are items that you guys are probably familiar with as like security and data experts already. So just very quickly, when it comes to data movement protection, right? So a lot of the system today are stored either, if not on-prem, they are probably in some form of a public-private cloud, right? Surely the services or businesses have to move this information shared with partners. So this is your typical SSL over TLS, or even if possible, have a direct VPN connection, right? Or peer your VPCs if that's possible. The next one definitely is classification and redaction. So actually, this is one of our main functions as a service provider as well, which is, yes, you can funnel us the data from a micro perimeter, right? But we only want to work with what is necessary. If it's not necessary, then let's redact it, or we'll work with you to help you redact it. It's ultimately based on the idea that all information is sensitive, and if we can separate them out for each and every service as much as possible and redact that specific to that service, then that allows us to segment the potential damage control that we need to enact on later on. Then there's role-based access. So this one or it describes for itself, we already know. The last one that's pretty key for us is tokenization. Not just in terms of tokenization from an authentication context, but also from an information context as well. Namely stuff like your PI and especially your credit card information as well. Is it really necessary to have the raw information? The answer is always never. You never ever need it, right? So that's where tokenization comes in. So just very quickly, RBAC simplified. So again, I think, and also I think maybe Emmanuel will take us through this later as well. But this is very familiar to all of us already, especially when it comes to zero trust, which is we can work with JWTs or JWEs as a basis for supporting access control, right? You'll be surprised in most older systems. Again, it's mostly like session-based, if you even have that. So having a very basic basis of using a JOT, for example, to enforce access controls dynamically through the use of scopes, that is like one of the fundamental constructs that we introduce. Okay, so as you can see, with this techniques all together, like quickly just now we talked about like using JOTs and applying access control, having continuous monitoring using a fraud engine, and then treating your data, right? Before we even extract and load it down from our core services, we want to redact the information, right? Then we talked about encryption, masking, tokenization as well. All in all, you can see that this policy plane on top of the data processing layer over here allows us to enforce a form of like DMZ, quote unquote, at the applications level, right? Between the legacy environment and our new suite of services. Okay, and what's really important in our toolkit is the ability to level the user and have like a dynamic access control to the customer's session as they operate as they go through our user journeys, right? So this is an example of how we enforce this in the context of a DMZ as well. So you've got your upstream applications, APIs, tooling that are more public facing over the internet. Then our identity layer over here that sits internally in its own network, right? And this is where we establish it as, again, quote unquote, like a DMZ, where any calls made by the APIs, if they want to reach down to the underlying orchestration layers, they need to go through our identity services over here, right? Over here, what do we focus on? We focus on who is the request originator? Are you supposed to have access? What is the information that they are after? And is the information requested for already on a least privilege access level, right? Something that we find potentially a challenge is, and not really thought about, is also how long the upstream services should have access for, right? What are our mechanics for intercepting and reducing the time of access to the information downstream as well? So these are the 3 to 4 different areas that our identity services focuses on, right? If we look at it conceptually as an ecosystem, we still acknowledge that in some sense, this is still like perimeter level security. But in terms of working with the legacy environment, it still gives us the benefits of continuous monitoring and as well as the re-leveling of access in a controlled environment. I want to show this because I thought like Azure demonstrates this concept like much better than I can do. So over here in Azure AD, they've got the concept of like continuous access evaluation, which is again a core tenet of Zero Trust. So over here, you can see that as part of dynamic access control, any access to a service is always continuously validated through the use of the policies, right? And you've got events, for example, if I detect that maybe you're coming from an unexpected location, or you're trying to perform a sensitive action like maybe changing a password or removing a MFA identity, right? Then I can force a revalidation of your identity again before you can perform those critical actions. So yeah, so I think in general they do a pretty good job of like presenting this context simply for us over here. The key thing is being able to assess these events and factors over here, then allows us to modify the customer access on an ongoing basis. For us day to day, the critical flows that we care about would obviously be stuff like purchases and redemptions that have direct impact on the customer's balance. So here are some other critical change scenarios that we care a lot about day to day as well. Anything that has got to do with your account, really, removing it, disabling it, enabling MFA, removing those identities. We also detect if there's elevated user risk. So if that happens, we treat this as a critical change scenario. Then we force a validation as well. Other things include like password changes as well as admin revocations. Okay, yeah, I'm almost out of time now. So I guess in summary, you've seen like two of the main challenges that we deal with at Ascenda day to day. One is like working the data and like organizing it for our customers in the first place. Second one is how do we work with them to architect and segment access across multiple services. Okay, lastly, before I end off, just wanted to say like we're hiring, also hiring for our off positions as well. Feel free to check out our website or scan this to access our career site. We're hiring across other services as well. And that's all from me today. Thanks for having me, guys. And thanks, Okta, for hosting this.
Thank you so much, Mel. That was an awesome talk. We really enjoyed it. You actually painted all the hassle of implementing the authentication in the legacy system. It was great. Um yeah, if you have any questions, uh, please let us know in the live chats, or we can take it up in the at the end of the next talk. All I see was like the it's a general comment, no specific question per se. Uh, yeah, and I would like to ask one question, which is the whenever we think of the legacy system, I've worked for a couple of banking and insurance applications before. So I thought I'll ask this question. Uh, what do you think? How long is the duration of someone? That's most uh, the first thing that comes to your mind, right? Like uh, when you say like let's say there's a banking legacy application and then they wanted to like upgrade it or something like that. Usually, how long does it take?
Wow. Um, So I guess it depends. We have some partners that we worked off on together in excess of 3 years, and some of the upgrades and re-platforming are still ongoing. Usually, if it's something of a smaller scope, let's say for a system-to-system connection, right, where they are upgrading, let's say even like the SSH client that they're using, then that would definitely be much quicker. So in those cases, we expect usually this sort of upgrades to happen out of box, but there are cases where, for example, they need to validate the source code, go through multiple security validation, so that can take up to 6 to 9 months as well. For I would say what's really key is the projects that really matter, which is the upgrades. Like if let's say you're working on like a really old system that is maybe let's say COBOL based, or your system in the first place does not have any integration to services like Okta or PingFed that allows you to sit like a user access control policy plane, then usually those are in general multi-year projects lah, because they need to re-platform and re-migrate all the information and rebuild a lot of the services on it. The faster ones usually already have some sort of like an enterprise service bus or like an API layer that is linked to an API gateway that makes it easier and faster to perform this migration. So those would definitely be faster.
Thanks. Yeah, because I know that it's not an easy thing, easy task to achieve. Because whenever we work in any legacy environment, even a normal change takes a lot of time. Change approval, make sure none of the other systems are breaking, and make sure like all the logistics are working. So, just curious, and it should be a really hard task to work on the legacy
Yeah,
system.
yeah. Just to also be like super transparent, like we don't help them do those migrations themselves. They are the ones that's handling upgrades, but we do work with them from an architecture context just to make sure like, okay, your services and our services, and any user information we're helping you to treat or manage, then those migrations happen seamlessly.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. Uh, Thanks, Mel. Thanks for the talk. So I'll just so we are at the end of the first talk. So I'm just going to introduce you to the next session, which is how to use Auth0 and .NET 8 to log in from any device, even your toaster. The title looks so interesting. Uh, this topic is going to be presented by our awesome ambassador, Emmanuel. Gonna invite him over and then let him introduce himself. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, first of all. Yeah, I'm Emanuele. I'm Italian, but I'm living in Switzerland since 6 years right now. And of course, I'm an Auth0 ambassador, as Pradipa mentioned before, since 2 years right now, more or less, if I remember. And I'm also a GitHub star and Master MVP because I share a lot of contents around internet, especially on my blog, especially about Auth0. I share a lot of stuff on my blog because I use Auth0 in production environment for my products as well. I have two startups, and in both of startups, I use Auth0 as a identity provider. So this is why I share a lot of stuff because I use every day the product. Yeah, so this is why I'm here today. And yeah, also the session is let's say it's not common to find this kind of session because everyone talk about how to connect from a web application, a mobile application, stuff like that, but no one think about a console application, okay, or just let's say an IoT device because it's more or less the same. So this is why the last maybe no 6 months ago, 5 months ago, I wrote 2 articles on my blog about the device flow connection because it's very common. Also, if you want to use, for instance, you use maybe every day this authentication flow from Visual Studio Code, for instance. If you want to connect GitHub to Visual Studio Code, they use the device flow because you receive a code and you can put the code in the web application and then the application is authenticated. So it's very common, but no one talk about it. So this is why I'd like to talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, sounds interesting. So I'm just going to hand over the screen to you, and I'm going to leave, and then this floor is all yours.
Good. Okay. Good. So let's start to think about what we need to start to create to get the device authentication flow. First of all, you need an Auth0 account and register an application, and we will see how to register an application from the portal for this device flow. In let's say more specific for this device flow, and you can also enable an offline access if you don't want to enter every time your credential. You can also enable the offline access, and of course you need C#, and if you want, but it's not um, uh, let's say requirement mandatory to have a REST sharp because you can also use the HTTP client from C#. It's up to you, and of course you need a connection to internet because we need to connect to the website. Everyone knows what is Auth0, but I just put these slides on my slide decks. And how it works, or at least what is a device flow application? A device flow application is a variant of Auth0, Auth 2.0 protocol, and it's let's say it's very easy because to understand how it works, because one device requests a device authorization, and in another browser, another device, you can get that link, insert the link, log in with your account, and then you come back with the, let's say, the device, the authenticated device code and user code. It's very easy to understand. I put the diagram here in the slide to understand how it works. So if you see the first point, the user start the authorization with a special, let's say, path called auth/device code, and you receive a code and a verification URL. Okay, and then with this code and verification URL, the user open a browser by itself, insert the user code from the console application, or a fridge, a toaster, and I don't know, an Uber, whatever you want. Okay, and then the device receive back the authorization. Of course, if your authorization flow will be complete successfully, the device receive the authorization token and the access token. Okay, it's very easy. It's very similar to let's say the normal flow, but the part that, let's say, the change is the part between when you receive the access code, the user code, sorry, and you insert this user code in a browser. Okay, it's very similar. And what you need to implement this device flow authentication with Auth0. First of all, you need to register an application with Auth0, configure some settings. You can get the client ID, and with this client ID, you request the code, and you can put the device code, the user code, the verification user URL to the user, okay, as well. And now this is the, let's say, the magic. You have to poll the Auth0 authorization server to check if you have the authorized client, okay, code to be authenticated on the client application. Okay, this is the trick. You need to poll by yourself every 1 second and stuff like that. But you receive in when you request a device code, a user code, you receive an expired time, so you can easily calculate how much time have the user to receive the authenticated code. Okay, so but we will see everything in the code later. Okay, so this is more or less the code example. Is not complete because we will see the code in a new application. In this case, we use REST Sharp, but it's the same with the HTTP client. So first of all, you need to call your domain from Auth0. Okay, Auth0 domain, the Auth0 device code URL with the post request, of course. And in the request, you have to add the client ID, your device scope, and the audience. Okay, and then when you receive this, when you send this device code, you receive in the request content the device code, the user code, and the verification URI, and then you can display in the console application or whatever you want this information. And then you have to poll this access token. In this case, in the code, let's say it's not complete because you don't have the poll action, but just the code to receive the authorization token. If you use this code, it doesn't work because it's too fast. Okay, so you don't have the time to insert everything inside. And then you can add when you receive the, let's say, the token, you receive the authenticated client as well with the access token and stuff like that. Okay, So let's see what it means in terms of coding. So first of all, we need to register a new application on Auth0 platform. Give me a moment. I have to screen. I have to switch. Sorry. And so from here, you can register an application, a new application. Create an application. Meet secure Meetup June. You can insert the name of the application, and you have to select native. And as you can see here, you can also add, also in the description, they use Electron, Apple TV apps, or stuff like that, because they mean app with, let's say, without a real interface, let's say. Okay, and then here in the settings, you can set a lot of stuff here, but the most important thing to set up here is the allowed callback, allowed web origin. Here, I copy my link from here. Okay, this is let's say the default settings for the device flow. Nothing, nothing new. And then if you scroll down until the advanced settings here from here, you have to go to the grant types, and then from here you can add the device code, because by default you don't have the device code back in the, let's say, in the grant types, so you have to add this checkbox here, and then you can save your application. Okay, so from this point of view we are done, and now we can start to open Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, whatever you want. But I use Visual Studio, but you can use everything you want. So in the project, you can create a console application, console app, okay? And then in the desktop, it's perfect. You can use desktop. We can use secure Meetup June 23. Let's get the name. 7 or 8 is the same, okay? I just click on 7, but you can also use the 8. Is the same. Okay, now if I have the mouse control, okay, here we can delete everything, and now we can start to put some code here. Okay, first of all, we need to insert some settings for your application. In this case, I put all the settings here as let's say are coded, but of course you can create an app settings or whatever you want for your application. Then we need the tenant name. Tenant name is this one. Okay, and let's see if I am able to your tenant.us. Okay, this is our tenant, and also the client ID. Okay, we can get the client ID from the same screen. Okay, and then we have our let's say settings to request our application. Okay. Okay. I get another here. We need only the let's say the tenant. Okay, and then we can install the REST client here. Install REST sharp. Okay, in the console application. So I added I just added the NuGet package to use the REST sharp. Not because it's mandatory, as I mentioned before, but it's easier if you want to send parameters or receive parameters to an HTTP endpoint. Okay, so and now we are more or less ready, because as you can see here, we call the let's say this endpoint, as I mentioned before in the slide, and it's a form. It's a form request. Okay, and then in the form request you can add the client ID, the scope. Okay, as you can see, it's just the normal scope, and let's say the parameters are in the body. Okay, and then we send this request, but we are not done because when you receive the response from this application, from this request, sorry, we receive. Sorry, I have to import also Newtonsoft to parse the object. Okay, and then as a response you receive a lot of information. We don't use a lot all this information, but I want to show you what we receive back from the first request. So first of all, we receive the device code, the user code, the verification URI, the interval, and the expires value. Okay, and with all this information, we can create in this moment a message to the user. Okay, so as you can see, I have Copilot on my on my machine, and it suggests me to use this let's say this code. I think let's say it's fine. We can use the code from Copilot as well. It's fine, and then we can insert, because it's very common, let's say, to insert a line here. So in this case, the console application, if you want, we can start to debug if it works. Oh, come on. Let's see if it works. I think it opened another screen, but I move everything on the screen when it started. Okay, now. Okay, and now, as you can see, we have our request. I hope it works. I don't know if it works, if I put everything in the right Agno host tenant. Should be fine, because I take the information from our server, but oh, sorry, the domain, maybe I put something wrong here. Let me pass again. The dev, maybe this is the error that I have. Let's see if it works now. Sorry for that. Let's see. F10. Boom, 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 boom. Okay, I just put the wrong domain name, because we are in the dev environment, and with the dev environment, we have the prefix on your tenant name. Okay, this is why I did this error. And then here, as you can see, we have the device code, the user code, the verification URI, the interval value is 5. It means 5 seconds, and then expire in 900 seconds. Okay, and then in our console application, oh, sorry, I was too much faster as well. In our console application, as you can see here, you can go there, click. Sorry, I'll zoom a little bit. You can click in our console application in the link, and we can open a browser and put this authenticated code. If I click here, as you can see, I receive the screen. Of course, you can customize also the screen with your logo, with your information and stuff like that. And then you can click here, put the code, and continue. Okay, so it's more or less everything that we need. But we are not ready yet, because we need to wait the information, okay, about the authentication flow. And how we can do that? As I mentioned before, we need to wait. We need to poll the Auth0 server. And in this case, we can create a loop, but you can use whatever you want. Oh, I love Copilot because he wrote the code for us. I don't know if it's good or not. We try to create everything from scratch, but it's more or less, no, it's good. I think it's good. Expire, yeah, it's good. So we can use this one. Let's see if it works. I'm very curious about that. Okay, so it's more or less what I would like to do. In this case, what we have here, we create a for each, a for. We miss an information here, maybe. Yeah. Okay, no, we don't miss. And so in this loop, we try to ask to the let's say to this endpoint if we have an answer. Okay, and this one. Okay, and then you try to post with the client ID information and the device code information, what we received before. Okay, and we can ask if we have a response for them. If the answer and the let's say not the answer, but the answer is standard code 200, it means okay, we have the access token, okay, and then we can use the access token, I don't know, to call your API or stuff like that, okay. But if not, you have to wait 1 second. In this case, it's 1 second until the interval is less than expired seconds or minutes. Okay, and then we start again with the loop. So in this case, we don't have any other way to wait the, let's say, the answer from the server. Okay, we need to, let's say, to wait. Okay, so if we launch again the application, and maybe we can remove also the endpoint here, and as you can see, waiting 5 seconds, okay, and then you try again after 5 seconds as well, okay, and then we need to go again to this screen here. We can copy this device code, and then we can confirm if you want to activate this um, this, let's say, device. Okay, and then of course after the code, because this is the first step that we want to do, because they want to be sure that are you, and then they ask for an authentication with one of your account for your application. Okay, then if I click on continue, okay, congratulations, your device is now connected. And if I come back here, of course, now I don't have any other code below, but maybe I can put another breakpoint here. I think now it's more faster because I just authenticated from this uh, browser. Let's see. Confirm. Okay. He don't ask it my credential anymore because the browser is the same. Of course, he saved your information, and the access token is this one. Okay. So text visualizer, and if you go to with another browser to JVT.io, okay, and we can put our token here, okay. So as you can see, you have all the information. We don't have too much information, but we have all the information about our token. I don't know why the signature is valid, but maybe it's my fault. Okay, so we have all the information that we have in the token, let's say, activated. Okay, and then of course with this access token, you can call after this stuff here. You can call your API, and then you can. This is one of my, let's say, API that I created just for let's say for testing. My application is public, so you can use also your say you can use fake REST API endpoint to test your application, and you can call the API with your token. Okay, you have to set this API, of course, on the Auth0 as well, but it's very easy. And then you can call your API as well. Okay, so it's very easy. But as you can see before, I say every time he asked for a credential. Okay, so this is very important because you don't want to ask with your, because it's not easy to authenticate every time, I don't know, your IoT device or stuff like that. What you can do here, you can change just a few things in your application. So you can come back to the settings of the application. Give me a moment, I have to find the browser page, the right browser page. And then from here, from access, uh, I don't remember. From the API. Okay, let's see if I find the API panel. Every time I don't remember application API. Sorry, here. Every time I try to find it in authentication, but he's here, and you can open just this one. Okay, and from the access settings, you have to check these two say checkbox here, and in the request you have to add the audience as well. So if you want to add the here, okay, after this one, you can add this line of code, and it means they ask also your audience, and with your audience, it means a settings from here from the Auth0 portal. Let's see the audience, the identifier. Okay, the identifier is your audience. Okay, and then with this all this information, you can call let's say your API in a very secure way, and of course it let's say the application doesn't request anymore the authentication every time, because we enable the offline application and the refresh token, and of course he asked to re-enter again your credential after a while, okay, for security reason, of course. But it's more or less, let's say, everything that you need for a device flow. As you can see, it's very easy to set up, but at the same time, uh, there are a lot of steps to perform to uh, to set up everything in a correct way. Okay, the benefits, of course, of this authentication type uh, is because you can enable the authentication flow from everywhere. Okay, and we don't we didn't see today, but you can also let's say customize your device code settings, how much they are long, how much they are short, and stuff like that. And I put in the slides all my reference what we use today in the in the session. And yeah, I'm here if you have questions. I'm here. This is my contact. You can find me more or less everywhere, especially on Instagram. I am very active on Instagram, and so if you have questions, the chat is open, and also Pradipa. I don't know if, let's say, I think you don't have question because it's your job, but let's say, let's say you don't have any questions. But if you have questions, I'm here, of course.
Thanks, Manuel, for the talk. I remember that my first experiment with Auth0 is the device flow, because I was working for a streaming
Okay.
company, and then they wanted to use the login via TV and then the device flow. So that's my first attempt. So whenever you're explaining about the device flow and the refreshing part, I was just going through all the stuff in my mind, like what I did,
Yeah,
you know.
because it's easy to understand, but if you don't follow the exactly step, is let's say it's more difficult also to debug sometimes because you don't have an interface, a web application for that. You just have a console and a URL. So if you don't know how to uh, put the steps in the right order, stuff like that, at the beginning it's a little bit
Yeah.
yeah, strange. Yeah. So
Yeah, you painted it in a nice way that it's very easy, but I know it took some, I think 3 weeks I spent some time to, uh, sometimes the token expire, and then
yeah,
yeah, and then the internet connection goes out, the polling does not happen. So those are all the things that we have to figure it out. And then you also mentioned, like, you have to keep polling until the code expires. So there is no point in polling when the code is already expired. So
yeah,
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 so
exactly, exactly. This is one of the pain, let's say, for the device flow because you don't have too much time to
yeah,
to enter at least the first code. Yeah,
uh,
the and
and
by
also
default, Auth0 return a 6-character device code. So
Correct.
it's very easy to insert, but at the same time, it's secure enough instead of having only let's say 3-character or a 4-character. So
Yeah, that's better. And also, it's like not keeping the token very long lived, because keeping the activation code like with a short expiry is one of the way that we can reduce the vulnerabilities, that even if it gets stolen, then it's better to ask for a new activation code. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I just have one question about the device flow. I just thought in mind. So this access token, whatever we got, like whenever I saw the code, is it only one token, or do we refresh it, keep refreshing the token, or is it a long
No,
activation?
it's refreshed. It's refreshed the token, but you can also set it up with say no offline access or stuff. I don't remember exactly the name, but you can reuse the same token, let's say, every time to call your API or stuff like that, for instance.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering, like, if you have a long-lived access token, yeah, then we need to do the refresh token, then it goes,
Yeah,
and then the device talks to the authorization server without
yeah.
there is no hassle of the user. I have one question from Pucas. I don't know whether uh, I don't know. I think you can answer this question. You know this better. How is OAuth different from
Oh,
Auth0?
let's say OAuth is a protocol for say authenticate. This is very, let's say, large description of OAuth, and Auth0 is an identity provider, and they because I'm not working at Auth0, but they use OAuth for let's say it's one of the provider that they provide for let's say for authenticate for authentication service, but Auth0 is a protocol and Auth0 is sorry, OAuth is a protocol and Auth0 is a company that use OAuth. It's very similar to the question, what is the difference between Git and GitHub? Okay, I receive a lot of time this question. What's the difference between Git and GitHub? Git is a kind of protocol to archive and explore source code, and GitHub is a company that use Git for for users. So
Yeah, I kind of pulled Mel to the discussion because anyway we're making a general anti talk. So uh, thanks for staying, Mel. Uh, yeah, OpenAS has commented that Emmanuel have an impressive GitHub repository.
I don't know. It's just, let's say, I create a fancy profile, but it's not,
Okay, I'm gonna
I
go
have
check.
I see on my stream deck that I did more or less 1K commit in the last year, in 1 year, but it's not too much, it's not too less, it's more or less fine. But I use GitHub every day, so this is why I and just for info, the if you create a good GitHub profile with especially the first page, it's also good if you want to find a job or stuff like that, because it's like a credit card in let's say in 2023 is like a business card. So because they see you taking care about GitHub profile, they say, okay, this is a good developer or not. So it doesn't mean you are a good coder, but they don't know that, so it's fine.
Yeah, I know people see the green checks and then how green it is,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
see
yeah,
the
exactly,
green.
exactly, exactly.
I know people who do the documentation and then keep it green, like
Yeah,
because it just looks at the comment. Yeah.
exactly.
uh, yeah, it's one way. Yeah, but GitHub is one way and is a gateway to your job. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Well, I see your background. Is that a screensaver? Is it already that's your office?
Oh no, that's our office. I happen to change positions. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So any
yeah, it looks like let's say an AI create background. Create a
Correct.
background.
Yeah. It looks good. Yeah. Suddenly I was realizing, like, oh, where is it? Is it a screensaver? It looks so pretty.
Ah, yeah, yeah, we've got a pretty commanding view of the area.
Yeah. Um, Anybody have any questions, or I think we can wind up. Yeah, leave a comment if you like this, or yeah, I think I have one question from sure. Any integration with DApp applications or project done?
From my side, no. But I know a lot of, not a lot of, a guy from Italy that he created, um let's say, I would call it a startup, a decentralized app with, let's say, NFT collection and stuff like that. And I think they use O0 because I remember the login process and they customize everything, but they use, let's say, O0. So I think, let's say, it's possible, of course, to use also for decentralized application, of course.
Yeah, I also saw some blog. I can post it in the comment or sometime later about how we can integrate Auth0 with NFT applications. All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for staying. And then hope you enjoyed the talk. We'll come with the next edition, and then maybe we'll create a part two of the device flow, and then see the real toaster, and then ask Manuel to show. Yeah. If you want to try it out with your toaster, or you can always reach out to Emmanuel. And then if you are working in any legacy applications, you are stuck, feel free to reach out to Melvick also. Uh, yeah, we'll leave a comment here in this in this YouTube if you have any questions, and then we will address it. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone.
Thank you.